necessary for God. Sometimes our sufferings are necessary for God's overall plan, but as I said, He's not a sadistic person who takes pleasure in seeing people suffer in pain. By nature, that is not His characteristic. By nature, He cannot look at pain. He never created pain. He never invented pain. He does not inflict pain on anybody. He does not do that. He is only a God of compassion. The only thing that oozes out of Him is compassion. It oozes out of Him. He cannot see pain. So why does this pain happen? Because now we are in a fallen world. That pain will touch us, and of course God can stop it from touching us. Many times it touches us because we create circumstances which allow it to touch us. Sometimes we ourselves are responsible for the pain touching us. Sometimes we are not responsible, but God allows that pain to touch us. But in that, He is with us, and He makes sure that we have the grace sufficient to go through that. Okay? Because He is God of love. He is not inflicting the pain on you. He allows the fallenness of this world when it is about to touch you. Sometimes He allows it to touch you. And I was giving the example, we allow our children to sometimes fall down, get some bruises. I remember when my dad was teaching me to ride a bicycle in my school days. I think I was in 4th or 5th standard or something. And the road in front of our house was not a very good road, It had a lot of potholes kind of things and all that. And if you fall, you're really going to be hurt. Of course, my dad is not wanting me to fall and get hurt, but he will run with my bicycle, behind my bicycle. Many of you have done it, right? You're shaking your heads. So he will run and then he will leave, and he knows that I don't know how to get down. He knows I will fall, but he allows some of this. It's not that he takes pleasure in me falling down and seeing that, but he knows some of these things are good. It helps. So the fallenness of the world, when it touches us, it shapes us also, molds us, strengthens us, and God's care and protection is around us through and through in that. Okay? Now this is exactly what is happening to the people of Israel, who were called the people of God. Now you know the story behind them landing in Egypt, right? Where did they come from? There was a man called Abraham. God called him and said, come out of your people. He was in a place called Ur, land of Ur, south part of Babylon, which is the present day Iraq. South part of Iraq, that's where he hailed from. He was from that place. And God calls him out from that, his own people. He says, come, I will take you to a land which is flowing with milk and honey. And then he is calling him out of a place where there were so many gods and goddesses of his forefathers. And he reveals himself to Abraham as the only true and living God. And Abraham believed, obeyed, and followed him for this long journey, comes in land of Egypt. And I'm not going to the whole story. You know that he has a son called? Loudly. Isaac. Then Isaac has a son called? Jacob. Okay. And Jacob had how many sons? 12. One of them was sold by his own brothers because they were jealous that the father loved him so much, always showered all his gifts on him and all those kind of things. This guy lands up in Egypt. Long story short, he is now the prime minister and in Egypt. And then eventually, you see, how did they land in Egypt? What was the land Abraham was told? Land flowing with milk and honey. What happened to that land? Famine. Doesn't look like a land flowing with milk and honey anymore. We sometimes go to God, say, God, I want to follow you because you are good and you do good. And you have promised this. But then, why is this family? Where is the milk? Where is the honey? No grain, no water, cattle are dying. No, that is still the land flowing with milk and honey. And in that land, in that whole plan and promise of God, Egypt is in the plan. Why? You will know one day. Those people cannot understand. How is Egypt in the plan? Only plan was Canaan. The only plan I knew was Canaan. Where did Egypt come into the plan? My forefather Abraham didn't leave his parents and his land for this place to come and land in somebody else's land. At least that was something we could call our own. When they went there, it was already being inhabited by many different tribes, Jebusites, Perizzites, Hittites and all kinds of people. But they come and they settle down, and some of them, they were in peace with these people, some of them fought with them and all that. Eventually, for years, this was their land. They called it their land. They lived there. But then, when famine struck, they were displaced and brought. They came to Egypt once they recognized their own brother is the prime minister, and there was grain. Okay? So, we can never understand how did Egypt come in God's plan. Is there an Egypt in your life which you have not bargained for? And that's why, prosperity gospel is dangerous. Because prosperity gospel never promises Egypt. Never promises Egypt to you. It only promises Canaan to you. See, even though God allowed His people to come to Egypt, He has never said that land Canaan, which I have given to you, is not yours anymore. I am giving it to anybody. No. Neither did He say this will never ever be prosperous. He allows some of these things to happen. God in His own wisdom can understand why it was necessary, but only thing we should take from this story is it is always good. Egypt had a good reason. All the Egypts that we have in our lives have a good reason, whether you like it or not. It has a good reason. Sometimes good for us, sometimes good for the overall plan of God for humanity. Or maybe sometimes good because it's the overall plan for that people group. We never know. One day we will know. But this much we should know, that Egypt, in the overall plan, Egypt is just put somewhere here and there. That is not all of your story. That is not all of your life. It is here and there. Anybody having Egypt often in your lives? You don't have to raise your hand. Just think about it. God allows those Egypt for some real, He is a good God. He will never allow something bad for His children forever. He allows it for a time period. And in that time period, His care is over His children. In that Egypt, God is with us. This story actually starts from Genesis, end of Genesis. Actually in Genesis chapter 46 we are told the sons of Israel who came to Egypt along with their households and families, and there were total number, how much who came to Egypt altogether from Canaan? 70. That's all that came to Egypt. And the last verse of Genesis talks about Abraham's offspring and their future, chapter 50, verse 22 on. And Exodus is actually picking up the thread from there. And right away we see that Exodus concerns the descendants of this man, Abraham, who was promised. The apparent problem is that these descendants don't seem to be receiving any answers to God's glorious promises. Abraham, if he was there during this time of famine, his faith wouldn't have been shaken. But these people, after a couple of generations, are not as strong in their faith as Abraham was. And they are like shaken now. Famine shook them, whole uprooting from their land and coming to a new land and settling down as going to a new city which is not your people around you, not your language, not your weather, not your kind of food. It's always a challenge, and it happens around the world when people move from one place to other for jobs or whatever reason, or as refugees. They find it difficult, they don't like it, but just for survival, people move. God allowed Egypt, but I am also of the opinion, if some of them didn't want to go to Egypt, out of those 70, wanted to stay back, God's care and protection and provisions will be with them as well. He is God. It's not that, when we move, God moves with us also. But when we move, God makes sure that even in the rough and tough of the life that we are going to be tumbling in, He will make sure He accomplishes His purposes. Whether you stay in one place or the other, He eventually accomplishes His purposes. Sometimes what we think is good, these people moved to Egypt because what was there? Grain was there. And that is the good thing to do, right? There is provisions here. Okay, you moved, but you never know the end of the story. What happens after some time? At that point, you can only see the grain. And many a time, people move for the grain quickly. And I've said this before also. There are people who change jobs for a few thousands, for a couple of thousands extra. Changing jobs is fine, no problem. And if it has career prospects, that is going to make things good for you. But if you are growing spiritually in a place where it is really benefiting you, the people around you are benefiting you, the church is helping you grow in the Lord, walk in the Lord, and just for a few thousand rupees you leave all that. And I'm not talking about leaving one job in the same city, leaving a job and moving to another city because that job is giving you a few more thousands. You are bargaining for a little money at the cost of something even more important. Spiritual benefits and growth and nourishment that you are getting, you are putting that in the back and going after a little more. And for sometimes that little more looks like a good thing, but we never know that little more eventually becomes what? We have seen families who have put themselves in trouble by making unwise decisions in their life like that. Families. When you take away yourself from a good knit fellowship and go to a place where you are not finding a proper fellowship, or you don't have time for that kind of fellowship. In the new place you are getting some more money, but there you are squeezed more hours. Okay, and then you don't have time for your spouse, you don't have time for your children. What have you bargained for? You are damaging yourself, thinking you are doing good. And then these families end up in problems. When you leave the church of God, the fellowship of God, constantly, you put yourself in problem. Anyway, that's another subject. Now, these people come and settle down in Egypt. Somebody can just remove that for me. And now they have lived here for, anybody knows how many years they lived here? 430 years. Okay? This story, which is starting in Exodus 1, is like people have lived here for 430 years. How many? 430. That's the number of years. That means, you know who all are there now? All those 12 brothers are no more. They died long back. Long back. At least I calculated roughly 12, 13 generations have passed actually. Those brothers who came here, they are no more here. Their next generation, then next generation, then next generation, like that, at least 12 generations are here. Now, they just remember one thing, their God's name, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob. But they don't have that kind of relationship with Him. The way Abraham, Isaac and Jacob had. Because they are in somebody else's land and where there are so many gods and goddesses, and you want to have a distinct identity, and we say, no, our God is God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob. But nothing else meant to them. We don't know how closely they walked. The way Abraham, Isaac and Jacob trusted and believed and encountered God, I don't think these people were. Remember also, for this majority of 430 years, they were not in trouble. They were living good life. That sounds like a good decision to move from Canaan, come back to Egypt. I am also sure in this 430 years, famine was there only for the first year, 7 years only, right? That's what was told. How many years? That big famine that came was only for, how many years was it? I think it was 7. It is 7. No? Okay. Anyway, it was not for 430 years. It was only for those initial. These people had all the reason to also go back. The way they knew Egypt had grain, they would have always sent somebody to check how is it back home and gone back. No, it looked like it is nice. Let's settle down here. Let us be here. They never decided to go back to the land that was promised to their forefathers. Seemed like now suddenly things have changed. A new Pharaoh comes. You know, you have never thought of it. You know, whenever we look at a particular circumstance, we make human judgments with human wisdom, and we make our calculations based on what we see. We never make calculations based on what we cannot see, especially things in future. You will never know how things just change. Overnight they can change. Thankfully, for a majority of 430 years, the pharaohs, not one, there would have been many during this time period, they were mostly good pharaohs. Good people. They were like okay with the foreigners. They were okay with the foreigners. But then one pharaoh comes who is not very happy with these foreigners who are like taking over their land. They have become numerous. They are now like around 20 lakh. That's the number. How many came here? 70. Now they are like 20 lakh plus. That's the number that they have grown to in a foreign land. And the Pharaoh recognizes also the fact that these people don't worship me like all the other Egyptians worshipped him. All the Egyptians considered Pharaoh as one of their gods. In fact, Pharaoh, on his crown, he had a snake also made of gold. And Pharaoh was considered a deity. One of the most powerful deities also. Remember, Egypt was a big power of that time in the world. A big power. Big power. So it was like his fame was all around, but within his own world, in his own country and nation, there are people who don't worship him, don't look to him as a deity. They don't care about who he is because they call our God is the God of Abraham, God of Isaac, and God of Jacob. You live in my land, And you dare to say that you have another God? All the pharaohs didn't mind that, but there is one pharaoh who doesn't like that. Things change. Your best friends can change. Your company can change. Your company gets sold to another company. Then suddenly things change. Your CEO was very good. Now you have another CEO whom you have not bargained for. You never actually went to that CEO and joined his company. But somehow your company is now under some other company, purchased by another company, and now you have another CEO, and he is not as a wonderful guy like the earlier one was. What do? You never asked for it, but there you are. There you are. Does that happen? Yes, so I'm just giving you an example of job and things like that, but I'm talking about every aspect of life. Don't ever make human judgments based on our wisdom and things that we can see, because there is a whole lot we cannot see. But when we surrender ourselves, in whatever circumstance, in the one who can see the whole picture, and you are not dependent on your circumstances, because whatever be the circumstance, you have left it to your God. And when you have done that, it doesn't matter. If things go bad also, it doesn't matter to you. Salaries comes down, it doesn't matter to you, because you are now actually not dependent on those things. You are actually dependent on the one who holds you and who holds the future. You know that saying, no? I don't know what the future holds, but I know the one who holds the future. And that's more important. You don't need to know the future as long as you know who holds the future. And if you have entrusted yourself, nothing is going to bother you. Things change, companies change, CEOs change, the world around you changes suddenly. You don't have to bother about it. So, your Egypt is also in God's plan. Now, something happens here. These people, I said, they have grown up into a big number, very fruitful. Seems like the Hebrew women were exceedingly fruitful. Probably they had less miscarriages. Probably they were bringing forth twins more, whatever. Or maybe there were no premature deaths. We don't know. But they have grown in a big number. They say, as we see in the scriptures itself, there were 6 lakhs men who can fight war. So we are talking about young men only, not old men. We are not talking about handicapped men. We are talking about able-bodied men who can fight war. That was 6 lakh. So if there are 6 lakh like that, just say 6 lakh children. Okay? And say 6 lakh women, that itself adds up to 18 lakh. And then there are men and women and who cannot fight a war, and all kinds of people. Easily 20 plus lakhs. Okay? Now, there is this king, a new pharaoh, his name, probably it is speculated he was Ramesses II. Okay? That pharaoh was Ramesses II, and this Pharaoh didn't know Joseph, therefore for these people's forefather, who was once the prime minister of this place. And he didn't like these people. Probably he was paranoid, probably he was upset that they don't fear him or worship him. So he suddenly becomes ruthless. He puts them to hard labor. He becomes a tyrant, oppresses them. He sets task of building 2 new store cities for himself in places called Pithom and Ramesses. He thought this will break them, crush them. Maybe they will leave and go. Maybe they will eventually die, finish off. But seems like nothing is happening. They are still strong. They are confident. They are going on. I gave them such hard tasks, made it difficult for them, put them through hard labor, but they seem to be growing only strong. So what he does is, he says, I have to deal with it in unconventional ways. So he issues an order in his land, a government sanctioned decree. The seal of the government is in this order. It is not a lynching that is happening in the street by somebody, but it is an official edict. Official edict for murder. Usually, any powers that want to topple another person or another power, they commit murder through proxy. Not officially, right? But here is an official order to kill. What? Whom? Male babies. They are seeming to be the threat. Anyway, it happens today, every day. Not by the government, but by the very mother and father who are carrying the child in the womb. It's murder. Plain and simple. Abortion is murder. Plain and simple, period. Because there is a distinct life. It's not just some tumor or some organ in the womb. Because that person in the womb has a distinct personality. That child, when it kicks its limbs inside the womb, the mother is not kicking it. Mother only feels that kick. That only shows that child has, the mother has no control over the actions, the thoughts of the child. It's so distinct a person. It has a personality, and the scripture says, even before I conceived you in your mother's womb, I knew you. That means there was a personality involved. I knew you. There's a personality involved. We are fearfully and wonderfully knit in our mother's womb. Anyway, this murder is more rampant today than any government decreed murders. That is sad that people justify it with all kinds of things. Anyway, coming back to this. Here is an edict. How does he want to do it? Of course, mothers will not kill their child. Mothers will not kill their babies. So what he does is, he asks 2 Hebrew midwives. Their names are mentioned. That is important. Their names are mentioned in the scripture. What are their names? Shipra and Puah. Wow. The Pharaoh's name is not mentioned. Scholars are trying to speculate which Pharaoh it could be. And they say maybe it is Ramesses II. Who is the big power whom everyone knows? The Pharaoh. But his name Bible does not record. But who are these midwives? They are already one of those people. They are not Egyptians. They are actually Hebrew women who used to do all this, helping the women giving birth, also for Egyptian families, Egyptian women's, delivery. They used to go and help. But their names are mentioned in the scriptures because their identity in the sight of God is more important than the identity of Pharaoh. The world might consider that actually there would have been many midwives. Surely, right? Not just 2 in that big land where lakhs of people live, and I'm sure every day many hundreds of women might be giving birth. There would have been many midwives. But here are 2 whom God has chosen. No. God didn't choose. It looks like Pharaoh chose them. Looks like Pharaoh chose them. but God actually chose. To the point that God made sure their names are recorded. You know, sometimes you might think yourself to be a nobody. Yes, in this world, you might be one like that. You may have no place in the society, no recognition, no position, no status, no followers in your Twitter, and not many friends in your Facebook. You know, that's how today people try to measure the popularity, and this person has so many followers in the Facebook or in Twitter or Instagram and all that. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't mean a thing. Doesn't mean a thing. As long as your name is in the Lamb's book of life, that is all that is important. Why? Because that is an eternal Facebook page. Eternal one. This Facebook will get over one day. This Twitter, this Instagram, and all these will get over one day. And in fact, they don't mean a thing. Your identity is significant in heaven, if not in Egypt. In Egypt, I don't think even Pharaoh knew their name. He just probably told one of his ministers, get me 2 midwives. And officially, I will make them the only official midwives to do all the deliveries from now on. Okay, morning till evening, they might have to deliver, say, 100 deliveries. I don't care, but I will make them only to do that. And I will tell them what to do. Okay? He doesn't even know their names. He would have told one of the ministers, go and get these 2 midwives, good ones, who are healthy, strong, and who know how to kill. Who can kill. These are ordinary, probably unlearned women, probably themselves barren, who found a role to play in delivering babies for other women. No one would have remarked about them as they went about their daily chores of delivering babies. Nobody looked at them, no armies gathered around them. They just had their lives, their work, and now they have some orders as well. But then this word comes to them from the absolute ruler, a God king. That's what he was, Pharaoh, to the Egyptians, a God king. In a word, what he was asking these women was genocide, nothing less. He ordered these midwives to murder the boys at birth, boy babies at birth. How do you feel when you hear something like that asked of you? You know, people murder each other for their own reasons, for their own good. I mean, selfish reasons. Okay? It thinks, when people think, by killing this person it will help my purposes. They do that. But if somebody asks you to kill anybody else, who doesn't in any way do any good to you by killing, then you are not going to be paid for it as, so you are not a hitman also. You are anyway midwife. You were paid to deliver the babies. I am sure if the baby died, I don't think the mother and father would have paid them also. Yes or no? If they are hiring a midwife, they are asking, do a job which we cannot do so that the baby is born fine. You should know your job. You get paid only when the baby comes into this world and cries out. When his lungs open up, he cries, and it's a healthy baby. You hand over the healthy baby, we will give you your wages. And you give the dead baby in their hands, I don't think they were getting paid for that. Nobody would have paid for that. Yes or no? So now they are being asked to murder, and for sure they are not going to get paid for that. They have no benefit otherwise also. By delivering a baby, they were anyway getting paid just for that job. Now, it's not a delivery of baby, but delivery of a dead baby that they are being asked to do. So, it is not an easy thing to hear for them. They were frightened, they had anxiety, they had doubts. They would have also thought, if I don't do this, some other women will do it. There are so many midwives. If I don't do it, somebody else will do it. Sometimes we are caught in a situation like that, where we have to take a stand for the right, and we know something is not right, and then you think, if I don't do it, somebody else will do it, and at least if I do, my prospects are better. My prospects are better. A little compromise with the right. With the right, people make compromises just because the prospects look good if you make those compromises. And you also reason within yourself, if I don't do it, somebody else will do. That person will get the benefit. As well, let me do it. But what did this woman do? But before I tell you what they did, I want us to look into one Bible verse. Turn with me to Jeremiah chapter 30. Jeremiah 30 verse 11. Here is a Pharaoh who is planning to gradually wipe out. See, he knows these slaves, these men, they are growing old gradually. Some will die of sickness, some will die of old age. Some will die while constructing some of these cities. Okay? Boulders falling on them and things like that, they will die. Okay? And if there are no more men babies, boy babies, men population is getting over. And women are not going to conceive without men. So his actual plan was, wipe out these people. Wipe them out. He is not able to go and kill around every man there. So let me start the long-term project. Just make sure the boy babies are no more there. Eventually they will be over. After say a few decades, or maybe in a decade or two, they will be over. That is his thought. But what does Bible say in that verse? Somebody read it for me. Jeremiah 30 verse 11.
For I am with thee, that the Lord save thee. So I make a full end of all nations, but I have scattered thee. Yet will I not make a full end of thee, but I will correct thee in behavior and will not leave thee altogether unpunished.
Yes. Though I make an end of all nations to which I have scattered you, Israel, yet will I not make a full end to you. It's God's promise. Nobody can wipe them out. There was a president a few years back, Ahmadinejad, president of Iran. Not now. He was the president of Iran, I think 5-6 years back. Maybe a little more than that. And this is one statement he made. That I will wipe out Israel from the face of the earth. You know that statement? It was a bold statement that he made. It was in all the news channels and it was a statement he held till the end. But this is the promise of God regarding Israel. I will not make a full end of thee. Even though I make an end of all the nations to which I scatter you. In a sense, they were a Of course, this was not the real scattering that happened later, but this was also like that because they were not in their own land, in some other foreign land. But no king can wipe them out. If God has planned something for you, no man can change it. No man can work against it. So trust the Lord whom you worship. He will make sure that you are sustained. And that's why it's important for us to know that your mortality is not determined by the Egypt that you are facing. Your well-being is not determined by anybody other than your God. It is not in the hands of your boss to make you or even break you. Sometimes we think our boss can make me. No, it is your God who makes you, not your boss, not your company, not the particular thing that you have got, that, or not your business, not anything that makes you. It's your God who makes you. And nobody can break you either unless God breaks you. Your mortality is not determined by the Egypt. Remember that. Is that assuring? You know, the Egypts that we face cannot overpower us, cannot overwhelm us, cannot overtake us. Because God is in control and is my God. That Egypt He allows in my life, but that Egypt is not sovereign. My God is sovereign. The Pharaoh is not sovereign. Your problems are not sovereign. Your pain is not sovereign, that it can crush you beyond repair. Your circumstances are not sovereign, that it will not change. As if it is written on the stone, it is going to be like this forever. God is sovereign. He can change things like that. And if God decides to do something, nobody can do anything against that. Nobody can touch you, harm you, break you, shatter you, destroy you if God is with you. Nobody can, no things can, no circumstances can. And I want us to remember that. Probably these women knew that fact. And that's why they feared God more than Egypt. And they said, not to Pharaoh obviously, they said to themselves, we are not going to do this. We are not going to kill the babies, because they, Jesus said something similar. Don't fear the one who can kill your bodies, but fear the one who can, what is that? Kill your body as well as your soul. These women recognized that fact. The one to be feared was not this Pharaoh, but the living God. And do right in the sight of that God, even if it displeases this demigod here. Do right in the sight of that God, because your mortality is not decided. The mortality of Israel was not in the hands of Pharaoh, neither the lives of these two women were in the hands of Pharaoh. They knew they need to fear God more than anybody else. Where did these women get the courage to say no to the king? Of course, they didn't say it in his face. They had plenty of people around who would have obeyed the Pharaoh. They would have shaped the truth here and there to comply. We see that the king is happy that he found two women to do his job, and he is going to use them to finish off these people, these Israelites. But this is exactly what God used to make them grow. Not through the saving of the people, of the babies, but eventually this was one reason why I will touch on this next week, why this kind of incident helps them grow. John Toland in a biography titled Adolf Hitler, simply Adolf Hitler, ends his study by saying that Hitler succeeded in bringing to pass the very thing he was trying to prevent. Let me read that again. Hitler succeeded in bringing to pass the very thing he was trying to prevent. He attempted to exterminate the Jews, but 3 years after he committed suicide, the state of Israel was formed. Okay, let me complete that. In large part because of his effort to exterminate them. You see, if Hitler wouldn't have started killing the 6 million Jews in the early 1940s, these people wouldn't have wanted to go back and settle down, and by 1948 the nation of Israel officially gets inaugurated again. They would have been scattered all around the world. Hitler actually helped the state of Israel get formed. What he wanted actually, finish them off. What he actually succeeded in getting, the state of Israel. God uses Satan's plan to accomplish his purposes. And I'll close with that. Trust in the Lord, because he is sovereign over Satan's schemes and plans as well. Thank you, Father, for your word. Thank you for reminding us, Lord, that we need not fear anything more than fear you. In the promises that we look for, in the blessings that we look for, you allow Egypt's, Lord. Help us not to get comfortable in our Egypts, but always look for the land of Canaan again, where we can worship you more freely. Help us not to get comfortable in our Egypts, where we are not able to worship you. Help us, Father, to love you, depend on you, believe you, and rest in you. Bless each one of us, Lord, to that end. In Jesus' name we pray. Let's all rise as we sing this